Hello, today I'm going to be making spooky soup. I'm using a tomato soup recipe from Love and Lemons, not to be confused with the dress shop for Love and Lemons. But I decided to go with the tomato soup because I thought it could be like a bloody soup base. And then we have some fun inclusions that I'm gonna add later. I need to breathe. Sometimes when I film videos, I speak and then I'm like, anyway, breathing. I've prepped a couple of the things in advance. I'm using the Love and Lemons soup recipe as my base. I've also changed it up a little bit and I will put the recipe down in the description below. With all that said, let's get to our soup base before we start adding our fun spooky elements. In my pot, I have about a tablespoon of oil. Heating up, I'm using olive oil, but you can also use avocado oil. Use whatever oil you want. I just learned about why everyone's going after seed oils, which is a whole rant for another different day. Just gets about a tablespoon of oil in a pot heating up. Then I'm going to take, now I'm gonna add about 1.5 onions. The recipe called for 1 onion, but we had a half an onion lying around, so throwing in 1.5. And this weird tub is because I used a chopper for it, which if you don't have one of those choppers that everyone aggressively uses on TikTok, get a chopper. It makes life so much easier. And I also don't cry when I cut onions now. Funny story, when I was little, I was cooking with my honorary big sister and we were cutting onions and I started to cry. And she said, "Emma, what's wrong?" And I said, "Charlie hit me!" Charlie's my brother and he was in the other room playing video games, but apparently I don't want to take accountability and I blame my brother. Sorry, Charlie. I'm gonna let this cook and saute for a couple minutes and then we'll be back to add in some other stuff. This is random, but I'm also, get out of the way here. I am also wearing my spooky Snoopy shirt. I want to just point that out for some reason. I am on theme. I was gonna dress up as Chef Kisses, which was one of the costume ideas for my Halloween costume video, but I decided to instead just be lazy, wear my spooky Snoopy shirt and my cow slippers. This is what I wear when I cook. Now I'm just adding a can of whole organic tomatoes, making sure to step back so I don't get any tomato splatters on my shirt, and turning the heat down so I don't get any splatters on my shirt. My shirt survived the tomatoes. Stab, 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 stab. Now it's a spooky, haunted, horror, murdery soup. Stab, 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 stab. Now I'm adding in a splash of balsamic vinegar. The original recipe calls for white wine, but since I'm underage, I just add balsamic vinegar. And some peppercorns. Okay, a lot of ground pepper. I cut out a lot of this clip, but I added a lot of pepper. Now I'm adding salt and giving a good stir. Also, please explain to me what bay leaves do. I have no idea what they do, but I add them into my soup and then I add my thyme and half a can of cannellini beans. We're going to use the other half a can later, but this will just help give the soup a creamy consistency. I also added in a lot of veggie stock, give it a stir, and then I am going to cover the soup and let it simmer while we work on our inclusions. And we are starting with carrots. So we are going to make pumpkin carrots by cutting 2 lines on the carrot. And then when we cut and slice the carrots, it'll look like little pumpkins. Oh, and there was my dad trying to say hello in the camera. But now we are going to cut those 2 lines on either side of the pumpkins. It's kind of hard to explain, so you kind of just need to look what I'm doing. You want them to be thin but good enough like chunks, because we're essentially carving out the pumpkin's stalk so that when we cut it, it looks like a pumpkin. Also, please excuse my sexy, congested, sick voice. I am sick while I'm filming this voiceover, and now you get to deal with hearing me like this. big yawn. Sorry, I'm recording and Blue's sitting next to me and he just did a big yawn. Now I'm trimming up the shape of the carrot to get more of that pumpkin shape, and as I'm cutting it, you can see they look like a bunch of little pumpkins. Isn't that so cute and clever? So these are going to be included into the soup later. Now I'm just going to speed up and cut up all our little pumpkins. Now we're moving on to celery. So celery kind of has a half moon shape to it, so we're just going to cut up celery and make it into a bunch of half moons. This one is probably the simplest of the inclusions. No, there's another one that's even simpler, but cute little half moon shapes. The simplest inclusion are the cannellini beans. I thought these kind of looked like bones, like little bone pieces, so cannellini bean bones is what the inclusion is going to be and what we're going to use for our other half of cannellini beans. Oh, now the tricky one. We are making mushroom skulls. So the reference image uses small baby bell mushrooms, but I don't have, not baby bell, button mushrooms, but I'm using Bella mushrooms, I think they're called. So I just cut up all the pieces that I think I could use for a skull-ish shape. Now I'm taking a straw and cutting out 2 eyeballs, and then I'm going to take my knife and make almost the little skull lines, if that makes sense. And then later I incorporate a chopstick to actually help make those lines and the nose, because it is a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a bit thicker than a knife, but not as sharp, so it makes the indents without being as precise. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but a chopstick worked. So I made so many of these mushroom skulls. This was the most tedious part. It was a lot. I didn't end up using all those mushrooms. I used about, I want to say 3/4, maybe 2/3. There's me using the chopstick, and there's what they look like close up. They don't look that great, but some of them looked really good, and I think they pulled off the effect that I was looking for. But I made so many of these mushroom skulls, so many. But now I am fishing out the thyme and the bay leaves, because you aren't supposed to eat bay leaves or the sticks of the thyme. And if you notice in the background, my dad is watching The Office. I had The Office playing in the background. I'm wearing headphones while I was cooking, and he's just standing there and watching it. So I thought it would be very funny to pause it and see his reaction while he was doing it. But I had to be smooth with it, and he thought it was very funny. Well, at least I thought it was very funny. But while watching this back, I didn't realize that he went back to watch it. I cut that out, but when I turned it back on, he went to watch it. Now I made sure to put on my apron while I blended the soup, because this soup is very splattery while I'm blending it. And obviously I had to mute this because this was just awful audio. But I also remembered I forgot to add the spinach. So I added this now, and maybe missed the pot and put it back in. I also added some basil. We had some basil from another recipe, and tomato basil is so yummy, I just had to add it. And I let this saute and cook a bit longer before then adding some more seasonings of nooch, which is nutritional yeast, which often is in vegan recipes to have like a cheesy-ish flavor. Some more apple cider vinegar just because I wanted a bit more of a zing, and some more salt. I used some herb salt. Oh, and this is when I just went crazy with the spices. I added oregano, I added dried rosemary from our garden, I added some smoked paprika. I just went ham with the spices and then blended it once again. Blending. This time not as splattery. I think I kind of got the hang of it. Once it was more blended, it was less splattery. But then it was soon time to add our inclusions, which once again is the cannellini bean bones, splattered on me, the cannellini bean bones, the carrot pumpkins, the so many mushroom skulls, and the celery moons. So here I go adding the inclusions, and in hindsight I probably should have added them in batches so that the mushrooms, which were thicker, could have cooked first, and so they all could have been soft at the same time, but I didn't have enough foresight, so I just covered the pot and let it cook. All at the same time. And now I'm showing off my cute little Loch Ness ladle and doing an awesome ladle flip, which I got on the first try. maybe. Now the soup was ready and it was time to dish up. It looked so good. This is what one of the little pumpkins looked like, and here's the final result. I think it turned out so cute and you could really tell what everything was. Hello, it is later. I'm no longer filming in the kitchen because my dad is watching the news in there and I didn't want to distract him and be a nuisance. So the soup was absolutely delicious. I loved how it turned out. It was so cute. Here are my final thoughts. So, I would recommend getting smaller mushrooms, then just cutting them in half, sticking them with the straw, making the whole little face. But I think having the half and having almost the like jaw and the skull looks better and looks more like the pictures. Now, if you wanted to add a protein to this, I saw people making little meatball rats and mice, which I think could look so cute. I didn't do that. I'm just not the biggest fan of meatballs, so you can go do that if you want. And if you want to add a starch to this, I thought adding black rice would be quite fun because then it's almost like ants are in your soup. So I thought that would be pretty cool, but I have chicken and quinoa in the fridge, so I'm just gonna add that to I just added that to my soup. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed the spooky soup. I liked the addition of actually adding the spinach in later because then it looks like I had a bunch of leaves in my soup, which I think just adds to the whole like witch's cauldron spooky soup vibe, which I think is what I was building on the more and more I cooked. Because I mean, making soup is kind of the closest thing I get to boiling food or making a potion in a cauldron. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you give this spooky soup a try, or at least try the Love and Lemons tomato soup recipe. It is so good. You will not regret it, especially now that it is soup season, my favorite season. And let me know if you liked this video. You can give it a like, subscribe if you wanted to, and I'll catch you in the next video. Comment down below what I should do in the next video or what you would have added to your spooky witch's soup. Okay, I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.